I'm going to dedicate my learning. It's not yet time here in the United States of America, but already in Israel. It is the evening, and it is the second yard site of my nephew, David Schwartz, who was married to my niece, Maytal, and was killed fighting in Gaza 2 years ago on this day. So we dedicate the learning to his memory. He was really an exceptional young man. Um, Full of life and joy and happiness and dedication to his ideals and so appreciative of everything that he had in his life, which was way too short when he was taken. Also mentioned Yair Hexter, a friend of his. The two of them were killed together, and so it's a somber and a difficult day. But we remember him, Litova. Talking today, we're finally at the point, second half of Parshat Va'era, where we talk about the plagues. The first plague, of course, the plague of Dam, the plague of blood. The water is turned into blood. The Egyptian water, the Nile River, is turned into a river of blood. And many reasons and explanations to try to understand these first number of makot. Something that to me is very intriguing and important about this makan. We'll talk about some of them coming together in a moment. But if we go back to the beginning of Bereshit, we've spoken a number of different times about connections between Bereshit and Shemot, and we have the first murder in the Torah. Cain kills his brother Hevel. God comes to look for Hevel, obviously knowing that Hevel is dead, and asks Cain, where is your brother? And right, Cain says back, Hashomer achi anochi, am I my brother's keeper? Is it my responsibility to know where my brother is? And God says, Kol dmei achicha tzoakim elai min ha'adama. The blood of your brother is calling out to me from the ground. You tried to hide his blood. You tried to cover it in the ground. Nobody would know. You buried his body. Nobody would know about it. But no, no, no. Kol dmei achicha. I hear the blood of your brother calling out to me, is what God says. And we sort of have this in this first plague. Jewish babies were thrown into the Nile River, the Jewish baby boys, hidden at the time of their birth, their death, thrown into the river, never to be seen. No, that's not the way it's going to be, says God. You're not going to hide their blood. Their blood is now the river, your river, which you depend upon as your life source, as the core and the reason for Egyptian dominance, for Egyptian society constantly being irrigated and constantly having water and thus crops and being the breadbasket of that ancient part of the world. And therefore, for your success, you cannot use it to hide the babies, the Jewish babies. Their blood has cried out to me, and now I see it. And so we see the plague of Dam. Um, Many reasons to try to explain it and understand it, and that's one, right? The plague of blood. When we think about it, there are many different reasons. First thing is these first number of plagues are a difficulty, but they're not death and destruction. Presumably, they had other food, they had other perhaps water in their quote unquote refrigerators back in their homes. There it is, Charlotte. My still getting back from my short trip to Israel. But this is not destruction. The first number of plagues are more annoyance, disturbances, right? Frogs aren't killing anybody. It's an annoyance. It's so much noise and difficulty. And the lice as well. It's an annoyance, but it's not causing destruction to Egypt. It's the beginning of the movement of their society, sort of starting to crumble, but it's not yet there yet. We know that so we have this idea of the midah keneged midah, and here God doesn't destroy the water, right? He corrupts it, and this is maybe even worse. The thing that you trust most becomes deadly and it becomes scary. You didn't lose it, but it actually turns on you. And so we have this irony. The water has become blood. That which is the birth of a baby, you've turned into death, the Egyptians, by throwing him to the water. Now that has become the source of your life. Your water has now become the place of of your death. Paro spills the innocent blood, and now his water becomes blood. Violence stains the infrastructure of their of their society. So the things that we trust, we're starting to see are starting to fail. Their society is starting to turn in the wrong way. That's the beginning of this first plague with the plague of blood. We'll give a few different explanations. Let's turn for a second to the plague of Sfardeia, right? Svardeya is now we're going from an environmental collapse, one might say, to the loss of personal space. It's a boundary violation. The frogs are not going to kill anybody. They're not dangerous, but they're unbearable. They're moving into your space, your bedrooms, your ovens, your private space is gone. And this is the beginning of the unraveling, in a sense, of Paro's control. Paro has to ask Moshe to remove them. But this is the attempt. You were relying on the Nile River. The Nile River is not there to keep your society intact. You think that you have control over the water. You think you have control over the living beings. No, 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 no. Your space is unbearable. I am moving in. You do not have power. You do not have control. And that sort of understanding also comes with the third plague, the Kenim, the lice. The magicians finally admit this is the finger of God. The magicians concede defeat there. Wise lice are small. They come from the dust. Lice it's sort of this humiliation. It affects the humans, it affects the animals, it affects the priests, all the cleanliness that the priests had. God is attacking, in a sense, with this lice. You could say God is attacking religious, their religious system, not just their bodies. And so we have different ways of looking at the plagues. I'll give you a couple more, right? The Nile River is national, it's divine. The frogs, those are land creatures, represent sort of the domestic. So it's moving sort of closer on the national level to moving towards the personal level, the homes, and then finally the dust. It invades the lice, it invades the body. We have that later on, sort of in the Torah, with different types of tzara'at. We have tzara'at in the homes. We have tzara'at right on the walls of the houses, in the body. We have that here too. It's going right. We have a civilization problem, but then it gets closer to us. It's coming to our homes. Then finally, with the dust, with the lice, the kenim, that is going to affect our body. God's move comes closer and closer to the humans. God, right? Paro won't acknowledge God. Mi Hashem. I don't know who this God is that you're talking about, Moshe, that we should release the Jewish people to go and worship that God. Well, God is coming closer and closer to Paro, right? I'm be right. You're not gonna have drinking water, but then I'm gonna be in your kitchen, and now I'm gonna be on the skin. Now I'm going to be in the air that you um, you breathe, and the skin that is part of your body. And so it keeps coming closer and closer to the Egyptians, these plagues. Now, something that's intriguing about the second plague is that frogs were very significant in in ancient Egypt. There was a thing, and I don't know how to pronounce it properly, Heket or so, was the goddess of life in Egypt. Frogs were associated with fertility, with pregnancy, with birth, with new life. This Heket is often depicted as a frog or a woman with a frog's head. This was something that was invoked by Egyptian midwives during childbirth. Life, if frogs is sort of life emerging from chaos. And so here, what do we have? We have first plague Dam, the Nile is overflowed. It's Dam. It's now not water anymore. It is blood. And then all of a sudden, the frogs appear everywhere. And when God sends the frogs, it appears like, right, nature is doing its thing. Nature is multiplying, but here nature is not multiplying. This is frogs are having the nature is spiraling wildly out of control. The symbol of life becomes unbearable, intrusive, disgusting. And so there are many who see it sort of as a sort of almost a religious traps. frogs were not casually killed because of their sacred associations. That's frogs were left alone in Egyptian life because they represented this idea of procreation, of birth and continuation of life. But now imagine ovens full of frogs, beds crawling with them, food contaminating. Egypt is being attacked by something it can't destroy without betraying its own religion. It's theological humiliation. And so birth versus death is what's happening here, right? Cheket, this frog idea, this idea of multiplying. Pharaoh presides over the death of the baby boys, but here, right, you are thinking of the goddess of birth while murdering children. Now this goddess of birth, this frog, is going to overwhelm you. And so we have here with this second plague, um, uh, uh, right? It's more of the reversal. You think you control about um, these areas of life, but that's not what happens here. Now, in terms of the third plague of the lice, right? Egypt was obsessed with sort of with bodily purity. Egyptian priests shaved all their head. They would constantly wash themselves multiple times. They wore light white linen garments, and it was to show their ritual purity and perfection. And so the dirtying of them, the lice, is sort of invalidating their priesthood. So we see, right, we mentioned earlier when the lice appeared and the Egyptians, the Khartoumim, couldn't do it. They said, Etzba Elohim hui, this is the finger of God. Egyptian magicians work by manipulating larger elements. Lice are microscopic, they're uncontrollable. They emerge from the dust. They can't be, the Egyptian magicians can't replicate them. And it shows again that their power is an illusion. On another level, sort of the Egyptian versus the Jewish level, dust is sort of the lowest element, and it turns on Egypt. And we have here as well the slaves are the lowest element. The Jews are the lowest element of their society, the Ivrim as they were called. But now they're going to turn on the Egyptian. The empire is being defeated first by what kept it in control, the Nile River. The idea of the frogs, their population, and now here, and this is a theme in the Midrash, the empire, Egyptian civilization, is being defeated now not just by its own gods, by what it despises. And so life affects humans and animals, but here Egyptian hierarchy is collapsing from that which it most detests and that which is most which is seen by their society as sort of being nothing. And so these first three plagues, many things to say about them. Another thing is, right, they're all on the ground level. Right, we're going to get eventually to sort of our space, the wild animals, the death of the regular animals, and then till, right, we get eventually towards Hoshech, which is sort of darkness. God is control of the sky. Makat Bechorot with the Mashlit, the destroyer all over. But these three plagues are talking about the undoing of the civilization, undoing of the Nile, undoing of the birth of this frog, undoing the lowest. That which was the lowest is now destroying you. It's a nuisance, it's an annoyance, but it's not yet the full-fledged destruction. Khartoumim can finally admit that it is the idea that this is Etzba Elokim, this is not happenstance, this is not random, this is our civilization, everything we stand for seems to be being destroyed and being challenged, but Paro doesn't get it yet. There are going to need to be a lot more plagues, a lot more than just a nuisance, to get the Egyptians to finally do which is being asked of them, to free the Jewish people. They are not there yet, but we are certainly at this point on our way.